Yamuna Tira Vanachari Chairada Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Shri Radha Govinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Tirayat. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 10, Divisions of the Creation, Text 30. Wow. It is. Atha param pravikshyami vamshan manvantarani cha. So, not sure whether this is right. Here it starts. Anyway. Evam rajantuta srashta kalpadish atmabir hari srijati amoga sankalpa atmai vatmanam atmana Ata param pravikshami vamshan manvantarani cha evam raja pluta srashta kalpadish atmabur hari srijatyamoga sankalpa atmaivatmanam atmana
Evam Rajapata Shasta Adishvat Mahurari Shijatyamoga Sankalpa Atmaya Atmana Taparam Pravakshami
Taranicha Rajaputa Srishta Kaupadishatma Burhari Chatyamoga Sankalpa Maivatmanamatmana. Attaha, here. Param, after. Pravakshyami, I shall explain. Vamshan, descendants. Manvantarani, different advents of Manus. Cha, and. Evam, thus. Rajaplutaha, infused with the mode of passion. Srashta, the creator. Kalpa Adishu, in different millenniums. Atmabhu, self-advent. Harihi, the personality of Godhead. Srijati, creates. Amoga, unfailing. Sankalpa, determination. Atma Eva, he himself. Atmanam, himself. Atmana, by his own energy. Translation and purport by his divine grace by Charana Ravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Now I shall describe the descendants of the Manus, the creator Brahma, as the incarnation of the passion mode of the personality of Godhead, creates the universal affairs with unfailing desires in every millennium by the force of the Lord's energy. Purport. The cosmic manifestation is an expansion of one of the many energies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Creator and the created are both emanations of the same supreme truth, as stated in the beginning of the Bhagavatam, Janmadi Asya Yataha. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, 10th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Divisions of the Creation. Now I shall describe the descendants of the Manus, the creator, Brahma, as the incarnation of the passion mode of the personality of Godhead, creates the universal affairs with unfailing desires in every millennium by the force of the Lord's energy. Kam karati vachavam pangum langayati grimyat kripa tamahamande Shri Gurum Diriparinam. The creator, Brahma, creates the universal affairs with unfailing desires. So it is amoga, unfailing, sankalpa, unfailing determination. There's this verse from Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says, Nahi kaschit kshanamapi jatutistatya karma krit karetehi avasa karma sarva prakriti jargunar. All living entities in this material world are pushed to act. Nobody can refrain from action even for a moment, even for a kshana. Kshanam. Yeah, sure. Oh, okay. Hare Krishna. So the only choice we have is between proper or improper action. We cannot choose between action or inaction. Although Krishna, in different place in Gita, he says that the wise, he sees action and inaction and vice versa. But the point here is that we are helplessly, Krishna explains, helplessly are pushed to act by the three modes. We cannot be inactive. So if we are acting in proper way, then there will be no reaction. This is devotional service, a karma. And if we act improperly, then there will be some reaction, pious or impious, or in most cases, mixture of those. So last time we spoke about we are trying to summarize different chapters of third canto. So last time we started with chapter 1, which is called The Questions of Vidura. And now we'll try to say something about the chapter 2, which is called Remembrance of Lord Krishna. So in the first chapter, there was basically the questions of Vidura. And now in this chapter, the focus is more on second chapter. The focus is more on the reaction of Uddhava, how Uddhava reacted. So how do we react on Krishna Katha? So when we hear about Krishna, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said that the best cure for insomnia is Srimad Bhagavatam class, or to read Bhagavatam. Often when we hear Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, and then this is the signal for our system to shut down. And then when we hear Mahaprasada Govinde, then we wake up. So the reaction of Uddhava, so we shouldn't. So this is one of the anarthas described in Madhurya Kadambini. It's called laya. Laya means to feel sleepy while chanting or listening about Krishna, vikshepa, be distracted, etc. Other anarthas. So until we have these problems in our spiritual life, we shouldn't think ourselves very advanced devotees. We are not on the level of Nishta yet. And once we are on the level of Nishta, then we can acquire taste, spiritual taste. And ruchi, spiritual taste, is defined by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur as strong attraction, much stronger than anything else towards Krishna Katha. This is ruchi, so much stronger than anything. All material attractions. Maybe there's some tinge of attraction still, but attraction for Krishna is much stronger. So Uddhava, when he hears the questions regarding Krishna from Vidura, he becomes very emotional, and then he withdraws in himself, and he loses contact with Vidura. And this is the description by the Acharyas. Shows that he experienced this prema, the level of prema, and immediately his heart started to melt, which is the next level after prema, sneha. And just by remembrance, just by thinking about the Lord, he actually he was with the Lord in Dwarka. And this continued for quite some time, one muhurta. It's 48 minutes. So you can imagine, so somebody asked the speaker about Krishna and Bhagavatam, and then he just, 48 minutes, he doesn't reply because he's in ecstasy. I guess we will be like, Prabhuji, wake up, it's time. You have other things to do. Therefore, Therefore, we know that Shukadeva Goswami avoided the direct reference to Srimati Radharani because he would fall in ecstasy and there was no time. So Uddhava was in this state because of relishing, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, the nectar of Krishna's beauty attained by the meeting the Lord directly through remembrance of his lotus feet. So remembrance of the Lord, meeting the Lord, the same thing for these devotees. He became submerged in the sweetness of prema, which appeared when the pain of separation from Krishna increased. So when the pangs of separation become unbearable, then this happens. So then from this, the realm of the Lord, Dvaraka, which is filled with eternal pastimes of the Lord, from this realm, he returned to external consciousness again. How this happened? Because Krishna, at one point, after these 48 minutes, of course, we don't know how long this 48 minutes, one muhurta here, I don't know what is the time frame in Dvaraka, maybe time is different there. So after these 48 minutes, then Krishna looked at Uddhava and he smiled at him. He said, Uddhava, please return to answer the questions of Vidura. And then Uddhava returned to external consciousness and he was laughing because of that. It was a funny incident. Then Sri Uddhava, Hare Krishna. Can you hear? Well, Vidura asked questions. Yeah, move it farther away. Hare Krishna. So Vidura, when he heard about the disappearance of the Yadu dynasty and his own dynasty, the Kauravas, he was naturally very emotional. He was feeling sad. And then he asked Uddhava many questions regarding the members of the Yadu dynasty, about Krishna and Balaram. Hare Krishna. And then Uddhava replied, my dear Vidura, the son of the world, Lord Krishna, has set, and our house has now been swallowed by the great snake of time. What can I say to you about our welfare? And Srila Prabhupada explains that so Uddhava was struck with great sorrow when he got the hint of the annihilation of the great Yadu dynasty, as well as his own family, the Kuru dynasty. And Uddhava could understand the grief of Vidura, and he wanted to, first of all, to sympathize with his emotions. Therefore, he told Vidura that we all suffering, the sun Krishna has set, and now what can I tell you about our welfare? So I thought this is interesting because we have the tattva of the situation, what is the reality, but in this case, the conversation is between great devotees, Uddhava and Vidura. We cannot say that they are sentimental devotees, although they are very emotional. They are not neophytes. Still, Uddhava decides to, first of all, to give some kind of emotional support to Vidura. What? Okay. And then the tattva can be articulated clearly. But first of all, it's good to even between advanced devotees, we see they are, first of all, giving some emotional support. Of course, there is also one case I remember. There was one in Vrindavan. There was one young girl she was sick. She had some terrible disease that she was supposed to leave her body soon. And then she and her mom, they came to Prabhupada and they explained the situation. Prabhupada was not, he didn't go in this direction of giving emotional whatever. Prabhupada just strongly referred to tattva. We're not this body. All of us were going to die, so shouldn't be disturbed by this. So we see both examples. In the Sandarbhas, Jiva Goswami, next point I wanted to make. In due course of the conversation, Uddhava explains that the Yadavas were actually unfortunate. Why? Because they did not know the glories of the Lord. How is this possible? The Yadavas are, if you read Brihad Bhagavatamrita, the Yadav dynasty, they appear quite late on the list of advanced devotees. We start with the hierarchy starts with this Brahmana from the south, who then there is the king, and then there is who was the next one, the Indra, and then you go up the Pandavas, and then Yadavas are quite at the top. So here we hear that they didn't know the glory of the Lord. And the Acharyas explain what actually that means. It means that they thought about Krishna as the Paramatma only, the Lord in the heart, who appeared in their dynasty. This was the extent of this was the scope of their understanding. In other words, they did not know, apparently, that Krishna, Jiva Goswami, he writes, so they know that he is the all-pervading supersoul, but they are not aware that he is the original personality of Godhead, the origin of all expansions of Godhead. So this was what they didn't know. Uddhava said, the others were all experienced devotees, learned and expert in physics study. Over and above this, they were always with the Lord in all kinds of relaxations, and still they were only able to know him as the one supreme who dwells everywhere. Srila Prabhupada writes, this lack of knowledge was not due to their insufficient erudition, it was due to their misfortune. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments on the same verse. He says, actually, however, it was not misfortune. They have great fortune, because it was explained in the 10th canto that those who are aware of Krishna's sweetness are greater than those who are aware of his powers. So in this sense, they were not unfortunate. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, they did not know Krishna as Swayam Bhagavan, as the source of Narayana. And this is the meaning when Uddhava said that they did not know the Lord. So in this world, it is proper that some know Krishna as Bhagavan and some do not. That is not criticized. Criticized are those who are intermediate, those who half know Bhagavan. They know half the truth. So they are criticized. If you are, I guess the logic is, if you are like Mudha, it is not criticized, because that's your level. But if you have little knowledge, Alpa, Jnana Bhyankara, little knowledge is dangerous. So next, Uddhava relates how Krishna concluded his pastimes on earth in a way to fulfill the atheistic conclusion of the impious, and at the same time to uphold the intelligence of the devotees. So Uddhava said, under no circumstance can the words of persons bewildered by the illusory energy of the Lord deviate the intelligence of those who are completely surrendered souls. Lord Shri Krishna, who manifested his eternal form before the vision of all on the earth, performed his disappearance by removing his form from the sight of those who are unable to see him as he is, due to not executing required penance. So Sri Prabhupada writes about the non-believers, the atheists. They are always very eager to establish that Lord Krishna was an ordinary man who was killed by a hunter due to his many impious acts in plotting to kill the sons of Dhritarashtra and Jarasandha, the demoniac kings of the earth. So somehow or other, these people, they say Dhritarashtra and Jarasandha were good guys, nothing wrong with them. So Jarasandha, he gathered all these kings and he kept them in prison, and he was ready to slaughter them to perform human sacrifice in front of I don't know whom, Shiva. Or so somehow he was not a bad guy. That's not. But that Krishna arranged that this guy is killed, this is bad. What's the logic? And I think it was Hiranyakashipu actually who his plan was to arrange the things in the affairs, the universal affairs, in such a way that if you perform pious activities, if you perform tapasya, renunciation, if you take sannyas, go and live in a holy place, then after that you go to hell. And if you perform all kinds of abominable activities, then you go to heaven after that. That was his plan. So this type of people, they preach this type of nonsense. So when we hear this, we shouldn't be bewildered. Prabhupada continues, such persons have no faith in the statement of the Bhagavad Gita that the Lord is unaffected by the reactions of work. Namam karmani limpanti, name karma pale spriha. And not only Krishna is freed from reactions, even his devotees are also freed of reactions of their deeds. According to the atheistic point of view, Lord Krishna's family, the Yadu dynasty, was vanquished due to being cursed by the Brahmanas for the sins committed by Krishna in killing the sons of Dhritarashtra, etc., and other sins Krishna performed. So Dhritarashtra was present, and all other kings were present when Draupadi was insulted, and somehow this is not a sin. We have to tolerate this, but when there is a reaction to this, then that's a problem. There was only one person who objected when they dragged Draupadi in this assembly of kings. Only one Kshatriya, Vikarna, the brother of Duryodhana. All others were silent, even Bhishma and Drona and everybody. So Prabhupada continues, all these blasphemies do not touch the heart of the devotees of the Lord because they know perfectly well what is what. Their intelligence regarding the Lord is never disturbed. So we have to know this is demonic propaganda and we shouldn't be disturbed because we know what is what. How do we know what is what? By listening the authorities, Guru Sadhu Shastra, and by using our intelligence, by performing devotional service. But statements of the Asuras are also condemned. This is what Uddhava meant in this verse. There is this in propaganda, Prabhupada actually uses this word. This statement, when there is a war, often what happens, you have the positions of the soldiers, they are in the trenches, and waiting for the attack of the enemy, and then there is sometimes there is some aircraft that passes, and then they throw these pamphlets with propaganda, surrender and we will give you, the Germans, they did this quite often. The pamphlets were in Russian during Second World War. And then there was actually punishment if some of the soldiers was found that he keeps this pamphlet. Then there's a severe punishment. I think it was like firing squad. He was killed. So in the same way, so Prabhupada says, this statement defeats the false propaganda of the faithless non-devotees that the Lord passed away like an ordinary conditioned soul. So in the same way, this is the propaganda of the demons. We should be aware what is what and be not disturbed by it. We should know. Our founder Acharya, all other Acharyas, Srimad Bhagavatam, they drew very clear line. This is devotional service, this is pure devotional service, this is pure unalloyed devotional service. Anything outside of this line is Maya. As Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, this is knowledge, and anything different from this is ignorance. So it's a war against Maya. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary, next point, he explains that that the Lord accepted a human-like form in order to display the full capacity of his spiritual energy. In other words, we shouldn't think that the Vaikuntha pastimes are higher. This means that, one should not think that the Lord has some fault because he has human pastimes. On the contrary, the human pastimes are superior to the Vaikuntha pastimes. He accepted, so Vaikuntha pastimes, I guess, will be Lord Vamanadev appearing among the demigods, or any pastime that of Krishna, which is predominated by majesty, by power, by Aishvarya. And the human pastimes are different. And because they are different, they show the full capacity of his Yoga Maya. Because the human form, the humans don't have mystic powers, they're not so powerful. And in this capacity, it seems that the Lord is more approachable, more accessible, and more, you can say, in a sense, vulnerable. And this creates special bhava in the heart of the devotees. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, Krishna he's depositing all his powers in this human form. So we have human form, but with all the powers of the Lord. In one of the first pastimes, the first demon that was killed was this Shakatasura, no? Was it Putana? Putana was the first, and then one of the first. So there the Acharyas explain that Krishna destroyed this demon, but he destroyed the demon in a very sweet way, without touching to his great power. He did it in a childish way, just by touching with his small feet this kulichka, how we call this, the cart demon. And Uddhava is more attracted to this sweetness of the Lord rather than to the opulence of the Lord. And this is evident because he says in Bhagavatam, when I think of Lord Krishna, how he was born in the prison house of Vasudeva, although he is unborn, and how he went away from his father's protection to Vraja and lived there incognito out of fear of the enemy, and how, although unlimitedly powerful, he fled from Mathura in fear. All these bewildering incidents give me distress. So what actually gives distress? It is explained by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Uddhava says, thus previously I was in grief. How can I forget his humility? Okay, what is the, okay, I'll read a little bit for before it. Krishna says, "Oh Father, oh Mother, be pleased with the two of us. We were greatly fearful of Kamsa." So Krishna and Balaram, they want to excuse themselves that they didn't take care of their parents. They were away for a long time. So this is their plea. We were very fearful. We were very afraid. So if this statement is true, it is a contradiction to his position as the Lord. And if it is false, how can the Lord speak untrue words? Thus, previously, I was in grief. How can I forget? This is Uddhava speaking. His humility, conforming to convention, which nourishes his sweetness, even though he is the highest form of the Lord. His conduct pierces my heart like an arrow. So this is the lamentation of Uddhava. That Krishna is so great, he's the greatest, and at the same time he's so humble and behaves in such a sweet way with his loving devotees. Queen Kunti said something similar in first canto. She said that you are the fear personified is afraid of you, but you are afraid of Mother Yashoda, who is chasing you from behind with a stick. And Queen Kunti says, this sight confuses me. So in this state of love for God, enhanced by separation from him, Uddhava remembers Krishna's magnanimity and compassion, and he speaks a verse which is very famous, one of the most famous verses in Bhagavatam, a verse which Vyasadeva employed to attract Shukadeva Goswami back, because he left home after he was born. And this was one of the verses. Alas, how shall I take shelter of one more merciful than he who granted the position of mother to a she-demon, Putana, although she was unfaithful and she prepared deadly poison to be sucked from her breast. So Srila Prabhupada writes, here is an example of the extreme mercy of the Lord, even to his enemy. Krishna gave mercy to Putana because she took the position of her mother. So Krishna is always looking for an excuse to give mercy to everybody. And in material life, it is just the opposite. People are looking for an excuse to give pain and to give trouble. Like you, this medical insurance comes to mind example. Like you have some medical insurance and then it's supposed to cover certain cases. But when something happens, then these companies, they're actually going for a serious investigation. They want to find any mistake that you did. They're checking the documents. It's like they're investigating a murder case. They want to find any excuse not to give you the money. That's the material life. And Krishna is the opposite. He's looking for any excuse to give mercy to the devotees and to non-devotees as well. So we have this case of Putana, which is very special, and also these stories about in some Puranas, there are descriptions of drunkards who went to some old forsaken Vishnu temple, and they were drunk, and then in their state of complete intoxication, they were shouting and screaming and singing, and there was some dirty clothes on the floor, and then they took one of these clothes and they were waving, and then Krishna decides that this is actually Anga Bhakti. It is waving a flag in the temple of Vishnu, and then he sends the Vimana and picks them up, and they go to Vaikuntha. And other cases like this, with this mouse that got burned, lit up the mustache, and he also went to Vaikuntha. And the Jamila story also. If you read the arguments of the Yamadutas, they sound quite common sense arguments. They were telling the Vishnus, wait for a minute. This person he didn't even mean the Lord. He meant his son. It's material attraction. It's material thing. It's not spiritual. How can you claim him? How can you say that he is free of sin? But the Vishnudutas explained, no, he chanted the name of the Lord and he didn't commit offense while chanting, so he is free of sin. That's it. Krishna is looking for any excuse. He chanted Narayana. Yes, okay, correct, fine. That's it. He's not going to hell. So that's interesting. In the material world, is the opposite. And then the Yamadutas were protesting, and the Vishnudutas told them, yeah, you're protesting because you're materialists. It's material calculation. For this, you'll get this reaction. It's material. So another interesting point is that Uddhava felt himself less fortunate than the demons who were afforded the chance to see the Lord on the battlefield while fighting with Krishna face to face. He said, I consider the demons who are inimical toward the Lord to be more than the devotees, because while fighting with the Lord, absorbed in thoughts of enmity, they are able to see the Lord carried on the shoulder of Garuda, the son of Kashyapa, and carrying the wheel weapon in his hand. And Srila Prabhupada explains, actually the demons can never be equal to the pure devotees, but Uddhava was thinking in that way because of his feelings of separation. He was thinking that at the last stage of his life, he might not be able to see the Lord face to face, as did the demons. So therefore, it was he was not complained, but statement. And Srila Prabhupada explains interesting fact, well-known fact. The demons and impersonalists are awarded the facility of merging in the Brahma Jyoti effulgence of the Lord. Whereas the devotees are admitted into the spiritual planets. So I found this interesting, the facility. So the impersonalists and the demons, they are awarded the facility. They are not afforded personal interaction with the Lord, but the facility. The facility cannot make us happy. Even the highest facility. And Prabhupada continues, for comparison, one can just imagine the difference between floating in space and residing in one of the planets in the sky. The pleasure of the living entities on the planets is greater than that of those who have no body, and who merge with the molecules of the sun's rays. So this is the situation of the impersonalists, and the demons, they get the same situation. So not very flattering for the impersonalists, although they claim themselves to be very advanced. Okay. And the last thing, Srila Prabhupada writes, because the Lord was a child, he was put in charge of the cows with his cowherd boy friends. These cowherd boys were great rishis and yogis in their previous births. And after many such pious births, they gained the association of the Lord and could play with him on equal terms. Such cowherd boys never cared to know who Krishna was, but they played with him as a most intimate and lovable friend. They were so fond of the Lord that at night they would only think of the next morning when they would be able to meet the Lord and go together to the forests for cowherding. I don't know if you had this experience as a child. You get something very nice as a gift. Like I remember I got a bicycle once that I really liked. It was in the evening. This was my experience about this material experience. I could not wait. I couldn't sleep actually. Couldn't sleep. I was waking up like every hour and looking, okay, is it time to to go out and ride this bike? So something like this will be our experience in the spiritual world. Of course, it will be much more it will be the real thing. Here is just a shadow, perverted reflection. Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Would like to add something, ask something?
Thank you for the class. I wanted to ask, you said at the end that no amount of facility can make us happy. And what will make us happy?
In the relationship with the Lord and with the devotees. This is what Krishna values most, and as his followers, we have to also walk in his follow his footsteps and put in our priority list, in our value system, relationship as the highest priority. Because Krishna has everything, he is everything in a sense, and still he's making endeavor to develop a relationship with his devotees. Once developed, to deepen them and to please his devotees. Krishna is already pure devotee of his devotees, so he doesn't ask anything from us. He doesn't ask anything that he's not doing any already. So I think this should be like our goal, right? To have a relationship with Krishna. Otherwise, we can get some facilities, some influence, some power, money, whatever you want, and then at the end of the day, what's the use? All these things are temporary, and they won't actually satisfy us, because the soul cannot be satisfied by material things. The soul can be satisfied by spiritual relationship. I think we all know that.
So to merge with Brahma Jyoti, this is material facility? Or?
Yeah, it's contradictory. Yeah? It's, in one sense, it's spiritual. But it's material in the sense that this, like in Bhagavatam, it is described that they have Avishuddha Buddhaya, they have impure intelligence, and this is material. Because the chitta, the polluted consciousness, remains, although in a sense they are free of false ego, but not entirely, because the false ego, I'm the controller and the enjoyer, still remains, because they don't want to surrender to Krishna. They want to control and to enjoy. What they are enjoying, they enjoy that they are renouncing the material world. There was this story, I think Achyutananda Swami tells the story, that Hayagriva Prabhu told Prabhupada, in the very early days, I don't think he was even initiated. He told Prabhupada, Swamiji, I decided to renounce the world, to give up the world. And Prabhupada looked at him and said, how can you give up something you don't own? It's not yours. It's like going next to the Empire State Building and saying, I'm renouncing this building. It's not yours. How can you renounce something? So this is what the Mayavadis try to do. Renounce. It's not theirs to renounce. They want to enjoy this false renunciation. Pauguvairagya katyate.
It's interesting that these days you were mentioning at one point from one of the sources that you were reading that the atheists, they go to hell, and then those people who are following them, they also become bewildered. Where was that from?
Yeah, from Srila Prabhupada's purport. He
was on what?
On the false propaganda the atheists are making, especially regarding the pastimes of Krishna leaving this world, they are claiming that just see, he's ordinary person.
Right.
He got the karmic reactions of his sinful activities, and he had to live in this way, shot by an arrow by some obscure hunter in the forest. So that's
well, it's interesting too that these days our everyday world is very permeated with atheistic propaganda. At one time, atheists were very shy. They didn't speak much, especially in public. They knew there was some kind of repercussions from that, but now they're quite bold. And everywhere you see these kind of statements that science has proved that there's no need for God and this and that and the other thing. And usually they present that a scientific atheism is rational and it's reasonable and it can be proven.
logical.
Whereas all religious sentiment is irrational, pre-scientific mythology, and it's not at all verifiable. And they make this sharp contrast. But actually, when you examine this basic type of argument, and this is what I see, you know, about 80% of atheistic propaganda follows this pattern that science is verifiable, it's real, we can do experiments, we build jumbo jets, we build computers, and then we have these religious people who are talking about angels and about what happens after death, and we can't verify any of this. They're talking about people who lived in the past many centuries ago, and we don't know anything about these people, and so on and so forth. So this is kind of the overall theme that gets reiterated over and over and over again. But actually, science is not as solid as they would like us to believe. Certainly, there are certain precincts or certain circles within scientific knowledge which one can establish with repeated experiments, you know, like doing electrolysis where you take a electrode and you have a positive and a negative electrode and you dip it in water and it separates out the hydrogen from the oxygen and you get oxygen in one container and you get hydrogen in the other container. So yes, this is fairly, you know, easy to understand. And that, you know, salt is made of sodium and chloride. And if you drip water onto calcium carbide, it produces acetylene, you know, these kind of things. These are very solid things, but most of science is not like that. Only chemistry and to some extent physics is like that. The rest of science is built on theories that are not provable, and they're constantly having to revise them because new information comes to light which disputes. I mean, I don't think for the last 100 years anybody who has you know, done any chemistry will suspect that that hydrogen and oxygen make water. However, there's a lot of other things that are not nearly so solid. But they take this idea that, well, certain small areas of science are very easy to explain, perceive, to measure, and therefore to make solid conclusions about it. Therefore, all of science must be like this. But in fact, mostly all of science is not like that. There's so much speculation. Meteorology is speculative. Biology is very speculative. Astronomy is probably the most speculative of all the sciences. And people who make these conclusions never understand that beneath the science that they're tooting the strong trumpet for, beneath that science, there's a level of philosophy. And they absolutely believe that philosophy, but there's no way to prove that philosophy that the science they're talking about stands on. So this is the problem, and I think in general, as devotees, we should be able to understand these principles, and if we can't refute them, at least we can understand them, so we ourselves are not taken in by these various things. That science is not nearly a solid monolith like many believe, or many put forward. We have this thing that's the four horsemen of the new atheism, which is, of course, Daniel Dennett, Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, and Richard Dawkins, and they all came on this same platform that science knows everything and all this other stuff is just mythology. But people who are taken in by this mythology, they lose out the chance to understand anything about God because they think, well, somebody disproved God. And people make these kind of statements. Okay, when did they disprove it? What was the argument that disproved it? I didn't get the memo. Please explain it to me how exactly it was disproved. So this is why I bring this up. That not only do these atheists go to hell, not only are they bewildered, but those people who are taken in by them also are. And a huge portion of our modern society is like this. They are taken in by this propaganda, even though in many ways it doesn't even make sense. It doesn't even rise to the level of common sense in some aspects. But at any rate, Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you, Maharaj. Also, thank you, Pandava Prabhu, for the class. I was thinking, Maharaj, when you were just talking about science, and how it also builds off of philosophy. There's so much speculation. I remember in high school, I had this one physics teacher. His name was Dr. Dong, and he was a very religious person, right? He was a particle physicist, but one time he gave a talk about how, because there's so much speculation in physics, there are all these crazy things that make no sense. Quantum physics, right? All these crazy things that make no sense. And everything's built on speculation, and how everything just seems so perfectly fine-tuned, but that it's just so mind-boggling, right? He's like, well, so why can't there be God, right? If already this is so inconceivable, why can't God exist, right? Why can't there be an afterlife, right? It's just more things that we don't understand. We already see these things that we can't understand with all just with all these experiments, right? With all these theories. There's so many things that are so mind-boggling and confusing. So I said, why not? Why can't there be God? Right? Like we can't prove or disprove these theories. So how is it possible for us to prove or disprove God? I was like, wow. Yeah.
You already accept so much weird theories. So God is no way so weird as your theories that you're already accepting. I mean, the concept of God, it's at least logical. Yeah, even in mathematics, there is this famous, I think, Gödel's theorem, which basically says that you can believe in the proof that you provide, but by going through the steps of this proof, strictly mathematical sense, you find out that actually doesn't prove. It cannot be proven by your proof that you can. It is convincing enough that it will convince you to believe in, but actually, strictly speaking, you cannot prove it. Anyway, whatever that means, but it says that in certain things in mathematics you cannot prove. Even in mathematics, which is like the shelter, the last resort of all these people. The mathematics is the absolute reality for them, and we know it's not true because Prabhupada explains 1 + 1 in the spiritual reality is also 1, and 1 - 1 is also 1. So even mathematics is not absolute; it is relative. 2 + 2 is not always 4. Like, for example, Prabhupada had these disciples that they were doubting seriously, so much so that basically Prabhupada, we can say, asked them to leave ISKCON because of this. About these statements of Krishna book about the Ugrasena Maharaja's personal guard, that they were like quadrillion of soldiers. So the doubt was how is this working? Mathematically, you cannot fit so many people on this planet Earth. So this was a doubt based on the premise that material mathematical knowledge that we have is absolute, but it's not. Anyway, thank you. Grantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the Sema devotees. Krishna.